So, if anything they would like to ask or discuss?
Use the microphone which is available.
Since I've started meditation and practice, my life has been easy in many ways, but also I have the feeling it's disconnected me from the life I had before, the people I was close to before. So whenever I'm trying to adjust to them again, I have the feeling I have to step out of my practice a little bit, and I get lost a little bit doing that. I'm thinking of my husband in particular, who is not interested at the minute. I'm not keen on going on that path, so I'm by myself really. And sometimes it's okay, I feel very confident, and sometimes not really, because I've tried to adjust to him again and go out for a beer or two, and I just can't do it so easily anymore.
Yeah, this is difficult one. I mean, it's for myself, one of the reasons I became a monk in the first place was because I didn't want to have to make compromises with the society I lived in. I wanted to devote myself wholeheartedly to Dhamma, but in a family situation, then you do have to make certain compromises with the other family members, of course, and it's not the same as being a nun or being in a monastery, and the harmony of family is important, and if you feel a sense of distance and lack of sympathy with spouse, with people closest to you, then that can also have the effect on meditation practice as well. So it's not things that you can really separate. I think something that you have to talk about and discuss, and hopefully there's that kind of mutual respect and wish for each other to find happiness in your life, and I think with most marriages, after a while, it's very rare that both the husband and the wife have exactly the same interests and same things that make them happy and that they enjoy, and although it's not always one wanting to go on the path of meditation and one something else, and the same kind of thing happens in most marriages, I think. So something that's I think workable for most people. If you have that kind of flexibility, you say, well, I'm willing to be flexible about this and this, but this, it's important for me that I need to maintain, and to find ways that you can help each other to live with the kind of difference that comes. But yeah, I think it's certainly true that as you practice more and more, then there are changes that take place. Not just that you become more peaceful or more wise and so on, but that your values change, and the things that used to make you used to enjoy, maybe you don't enjoy so much, and other things that you never enjoyed before now can become quite enjoyable. I think that in the end, within family, if there is that basis of trust, respect, and love, that these things are workable, but they're not easy. And of course, I don't have that kind of direct experience to really be able to say too much that's useful on that, because of course I've never led household life myself. But,
lose my schizophrenia.
Yeah.
So I try to, not lose track completely with my husband or friends, or I'm not strong deep inside to just I still feel a bit towards.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what makes it so difficult. It's like that. Even monks have, similar kind. I mean, not in quite the same extent, but as you become more senior as a monk, more demands or expectations for you for whether it's to help building things in the monastery or teaching and administration and balancing all those kinds of responsibilities with one's own meditation practice can be very difficult and stressful for monks. So that kind of basic working out that balance between one's responsibilities to others, whether it's in a monastery or in a family, or and to yourself. It is something that you really have to learn through trial and error and what works, and keeping that at least effort to observe, because it's not always the same. Sometimes some things really spin your mind out a lot, and sometimes not so much. Some things not so much. Sometimes the same thing at different times you can deal with better than others. So trying to pick up and learn from that as well, and try to sort of adapt to that the best you can. But this is why the Buddha said ultimately for realization of nibbana, then monastic life is superior to lay life. I mean, that's not saying everyone should become a monk, but this is saying that it's a lot more difficult as a lay person, and that you're not having the same kind of supportive conditions. Some things are going to give you a boost, some things are going to pull you down, and it's just working the best you can with that. That's the life you've chosen. You've made that commitment to husband, to children, and so on. And it's, this is my life. How can I do the best I can with things like this? Yeah. Anybody else? Anything?
Thank you, Ajahn, for the talk today. You talked a little bit about time passing and rebirth, and I was interested in your view of gene and inheritance through gene, either cultural genes or memes as they're known, or through physical manifestations, and whether there's something you'd like to comment on that. I was thinking particularly about repeating mistakes or inheriting physical symptoms that are remanifesting, as the generations go on down and down.
But what were cultural genes called again?
Memes.
Oh, that's Richard Dawkins' thing. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I'm not a great scientist, so I'll offer you kind of layman's view of the scientific side of things. From what I have picked up is that the idea of the role of genes is changing even in the scientific community, in the sense that sort of genetic determinism is not anywhere near as popular or accepted as it used to be. You are this because your genes are like that, and you map the whole gene system, and then you can map somebody's life and someone's fate and so on. And now they're finding that, at least from what I've studied, that genes have, in certain cases, almost like a trigger or a off and on switch. And so you might have a gene that's dormant the whole of your life because you never press the on switch, or you have a gene that you learn how to switch. And so this is where the role of spiritual life comes in, if you want to express it in those terms. So you have ability to, on a certain level at least, to affect what genes are firing and what genes are not firing. That would certainly fit in with the idea that as human beings we're born with a certain karmic inheritance, which the physical counterpart of, we may say, express in terms of genes. But that's like your raw material. So given any kind of raw material, say if you're painting with oils or you're painting with watercolor or you're using different kinds of canvases, it's going to determine to a certain extent what you can produce. You know, you can only produce things that kind of material can allow you to produce. But within that scope, then you have a certain area of freedom and creativity in which you can make useful and valid choices. So, as regards certain kinds of physical illness, seem strongly genetically influenced, but then it's not, absolutely sure thing that if you have that gene, then you're going to get that kind of illness. It's more like a predisposition. So this area, nobody's really worked out to what extent, or how predisposed are you, and can you increase or decrease the likelihood that gene is going to manifest as a physical illness. I don't have the answers for that, but in terms of Buddhist teaching, then I would say yes, it's possible that you could decrease the likelihood, but that in the case that you have some karma that you to use from past life and that it's going to manifest physically, then this was how it would seem. That would be the mechanism, the physical mechanism for karma. In other words, I would propose. It's my guess. Seems to fit. So I think the most important point really is that there's no kind of fixed determinism here that somebody with this genetic inheritance will necessarily have this kind of life or that kind of life. Then again, even if there are certain physical illnesses that develop through genetic inheritance, that physical illness in its turn doesn't determine the subjective experience of the human being with that illness, and it's that subjective experience which is really what we're dealing with in Dhamma practice.
Yes, I wanted to ask it because of when you were saying that you become more aware or more mindful of what's happening, and sometimes that can help with certain things that recur again and again, and you're looking at patterns in your life and say, why is that? And then sort of look back and go, that might be why. So you can step outside. It's not that you won't have that gene, but you do have an awareness that that it's there, and then you live your life aware that it's there, if you see what I mean, and that then helps with if you are suffering or if you're in pain, as you say, your subjective experience of it.
Yes, I think that's true. And there are these kind of recurrent patterns that I think that we start to observe in our life. And I did a long solitary retreat many years ago in a cave, and in that sort of sensory deprivation for like a whole year, and it's going pitch black for a whole year, more or less, and it's interesting the sort of things that come up from your childhood and things, and old songs and things that somehow without any kind of volition just pop up in your mind and seem to encapsulate the whole thing, but maybe better than a Dhamma teaching could. There's this favourite song as a layman by David Bowie called "Always Crashing in the Same Car." I don't know if you know that song, and it's just this recurrent pattern. We just make the same stupid mistake, again and again. There's always this sort of David Bowie voice in my mind saying "always crashing in the same car," and so that that's I think how it feels sometimes. You think you finally got this worked out. You've got a handle on it, and then you do exactly the same thing again and again. But what the teaching of the Buddha tells us is that there is a level of, say, good practice, which more or less you expressed, in which there are certain kinds of desires, certain kinds of intentions and so on, which are manifest, but now you just see them for what they are, and they gradually atrophy, more or less, or they don't have any kind of power over you in the same way. But the Buddha also taught that there's these levels of enlightenment, the 4 levels of enlightenment, which are more or less like quantum leaps of consciousness. There's something radically different now. It means that certain things just can't manifest anymore. It's not just that they're there and that they don't catch you out in the same way, but that they just don't appear anymore altogether. So there's a complete cessation of certain attitudes, ways of thinking, habits, all kinds of stuff, because the foundation for them has been removed. So this is a kind of difference between what's like a good level of practice that you can reach, and then this sort of quantum leap to somewhere where the problem is not arising in the first place. Yeah.
You mentioned merit gaining. I find the whole thing
difficult.
Strange.
Yes. Yeah.
Could you try and
Well, the experience in a Buddhist country like Thailand is you're experiencing Buddhism as it's evolved over hundreds of years, thousands of years, and in every country that Buddhism's gone, it hasn't sort of tried to get rid of the other religions. It's sort of melted into them. So in Buddhism in Thailand, you've got elements of Brahmanism and elements of Hinduism, and all kind of mixed together, plus all kinds of other accretions and deviations. So you have like Buddhism that you find in a book and Buddhism that you find in Thailand, and sometimes when you have these kind of terms, what you read in a book and what you find in everyday life can seem quite divergent. But anyway, the basic idea of punya or merit, which is hopeless translation, we just don't have a decent word for it. So sometimes if you have a lot of difficulty with a word like merit, just go back to the Pali and just sort of start again and call it punya or pun, if you like. So the traditional explanation of it is that which cleanses the heart. And there are 3 main kinds of activities that cleanse the heart in a way which is referred to as punya. And one is dana or generosity, one is precepts, sila, and one is bhavana or mental cultivation, development. So if you look at Thai society, then they've kind of focused almost exclusively on that first kind of merit-producing activity, which is giving, sharing. So it's very strong in Thai society, to the extent that tambun, or to make merit, for most people means to make some kind of offering to monks or to something like that. You're going to the temple to make merit, tambun. So this is something that most Thai Buddhists themselves are unclear about, that they tend to think that making merit means making financial offerings or physical offerings, whereas they're often unaware that these other kinds of merit-making activities are also taught by the Buddha, and actually perhaps more important. So why is giving considered to be punya? Because when you give, then you are cleansing the mind, at least to a certain level, of this attachment to money, to wealth, to possessions. This is me, this is mine, this is for me. You know, I got this, I made this myself, it's for me. And so the intention to give and to share has an effect on that attitude to life, and it's considered to be a cleansing of it. So to the extent which you're able to give without wanting anything in return, whether it's some financial return or whether it's some respect, good name or whatever, means that the cleansing effect will be very strong. Whereas if there's some kind of hidden desire for something in return, then the cleansing of the heart through giving will be much reduced. So in layman's terms we could say that you don't get so much merit if you want something back for what you give. You get more merit by giving without wanting something back. But for most people, most people start off with hope for something in return. So it's not like that's bad and wrong or something. You say, well, look, it's not a very effective merit-making activity, because you're not really cleansing that sense of attachment to me and mine in physical possessions. And with the keeping of precepts, I mean, there are very few people, I think, that I met that would recognize keeping precepts as making merit. You know, if you say, "Oh, I haven't got any time to make merit. I'm too busy working," and so on. But keeping precepts and staying within boundaries of precepts which you've taken on voluntarily, not that you feel forced upon you, means that you're purifying your conduct, and to purify your conduct, you're purifying intention. So you're being aware of intention to hurt, to steal, to take what's not, and so on, and you're letting go of that intention. So you're cleansing the intention in the mind. You're abandoning unwholesome intentions and developing wholesome intentions. You're creating, helping to create a family, a society based on trust and kindness and so on, rather than one based on, big fish eats little fish, everyone out for himself. So that's an inner cleansing and an outer cleansing. So it's more powerful cleansing than giving and sharing. But then ultimate cleansing is of meditation and the inner cultivation, where you're finding skillful means of abandoning greed, selfishness, hatred, anxieties, and so on, and developing the wholesome qualities of kindness, patience, peace, wisdom, and so on. So that's kind of the ultimate, most kind of cleansing. So that's what it really means. But as I say, there are very few people who understand that, who've been the monks, I guess, really to blame for not really communicating this clearly enough. So people would say, well, I make merit, I put food into monks' bowls and so on. So and that's good enough, but that's not really what the Buddha was teaching. Now there is an added dimension to this, and that is that in that first level of merit making, the offering and sharing of things, then the Buddha said that this merit, and here it has a more kind of slightly different emphasis, of saying it is dependent also on the recipient of the offering. So for instance, if you were to make an offering of 100 baht to a monk who doesn't keep his precepts and is a very bad monk, let's say, the merit would be less than if you were to give to a very pure monk who would use that money in the correct way for the good of the sasana. So in a more rational way, you could say, well, the offering you give will lead to benefit for many people. If it's offered to a pure monk, then a bad monk who might use the money to go and buy cigarettes or something like that. But at the same time, there does seem to be here an element which is like independent of your own intention, something that's sort of out there, which again is dependent upon what you offer, how you offer it, and most something which you can't. It's all like who receives what you give. So this is kind of a law of nature, if you like, that the Buddha discovered and shared with us. This is what I understand. But some people take that and from it, then their minds can become somewhat unwholesome. My favourite example is when I was Pakao and as an Anagarika, just newly arrived in Thailand in early 1979, and Ajahn Chah received an invitation to go to England in the hot season, which is always the time when food is most scarce anyway. And so Ajahn Chah wasn't at the monastery, and I was like 100th in line, it's like 60, 70 monks and then sort of novices, and I was almost right at the very end. And so the food sort of jacked out along the line. So it's very little coming to the end of the line, and everybody was having to tighten their belt a bit because Ajahn Chah wasn't there, and a lot of people weren't going because he wasn't there. And then one day this big coach tour bus came into the monastery, and everybody, we were very kind of restrained. Everybody's sort of looking up, and there's something special to eat today, And it turned out this bus came all the way from Canterbury. And at the back it was full of durians and mangosteens and all these things. I never eaten the durian before, and everybody had been telling me about them, and I was kind of excited. And so they were unloading all this stuff. And then the tour leader asked one of the monks, he said, "Where's Ajahn Chah?" And the monk said, "Oh, Ajahn Chah's not here, he's gone to England." And he said, "Oh." And he hastily conferred with his friends, and they put all the fruit back on the bus and drove off to another monastery, you see, because they come all that way to make merit, you see, and they wanted a fully enlightened monk and to make it worthwhile, you see. So they consider they weren't getting enough merit from all of us, that they wanted the merit of offering to an arahant, you see. So this is the way that a teaching can sometimes be adopted and lead to unfortunate consequences, at least for some of the young monks. But that's not to say that it's not true. But you could argue that the bad karma they made from disappointing all of us probably might have outweighed the good karma they made from finding a monk that they wanted to give the food to. I think that generally speaking, the teaching on punya sort of fits with and dovetails with the teaching of parami and the perfections, and this idea that there is a gradual kind of maturing of the whole human being over the course of many lifetimes, which in the end is like factor X, if you like, which determines whether people really break through in their meditation. So I think if you see people who meditated for many years, and both monks and lay people, that you can see people who put an awful lot of effort into it, and great deal of sincerity, intelligence, application of techniques. They've found the teachers, they've got the information, they've applied the information, and yet somehow nothing really seems to work. And yet I've met monks, particularly Thai monks, and like ex-gangsters and people who lived the most unskillful life, and within like 2-3 months of becoming monks, they're all in a really deep meditation state. And this, I feel is this accumulation, or you want to call it good karma or parami or punya, over many lives, which is manifesting. So it's by no means something that can be just sort of put aside as, no, I'm not into that, I'm into meditation. It all is together. There is a sutta in which the Buddha says to monks, monks don't reject or overlook or or look down upon merit. Merit is another name for happiness. So, and this is a very important point, that the only way that you really have develop the mental integrity and courage to be able to really probe into the five khandhas, which means you're really overturning all your ideas of who you are, you need a deep fund and pool happiness. You've got to be really happy to be able to do that. So some people say, don't do that kind of meditation, you just get attached to the happy feelings that arise. That's not what meditation's about. But happiness has a very important role to play, and that kind of inner happiness that comes through meditation gives you the foundation for all the vipassana practices and the wisdom practices that really ultimately cut through defilement. But I think, generally speaking, if people are meditating a lot, after a while you just find you want to give and share and do things for other people, and it just seems to be something that happens naturally when the mind becomes more mindful and calm and clear. So I think that's the love and interest in merit just as a natural byproduct of spiritual life, I think.
Ajahn, could you also mention the other way of making merits in the Bunkiriya Vattu?
Let's see if I can remember them all. There's a commentarial tradition in which the three areas of merit making, or three levels of merit making, are expanded to 10. So they're basically those three. But for instance, making offerings to those who've passed away, for instance, and dedicating merit. So many people, probably the vast majority of Thai people, when they put food in monks' bowls, they're dedicating that to parents, grandparents, people who've passed away. So that the dedication of merit is a very important feature of Thai Buddhism, or Asian Buddhism generally. But the wonderful thing is that dedicating merit is in itself meritorious. So you create punya by you make an offering, so that's punya, and then you dedicate the merit that you made to somebody else, and that's more punya. And then if you were to see somebody else make merit and dedicate merit, and you were to anumotana, express appreciation for it, then that's merit as well. So it's this all explained in terms of the cleansing of the heart, but these are like specific kind of instances in which have become embedded into Buddhist culture. So that ability to express appreciation and to we say anumotana when other people make merit is so if you've lived in Thailand, you know it's got a big thing in Buddhist ceremonies. So there's offering the showing and gestures of respect to one's elders is considered meritorious in this group of dhammas. Remember, this is not these are not teaching straight from the Buddha's mouth, but by the Buddhist teachers of later generations, kind of expounded on. But it's particularly useful to understand like Buddhist cultures, because these have played a big part. So showing respect to one's elders and seniors, it's considered to be meritorious. In other words, being humble, not being conceited and puffed up. There's what I'm doing, giving a Dhamma talk. There's what you're doing, listening to a Dhamma talk. That's two more. What can you remember? that counts as that's in listening, though, isn't it? It's like taking in the Dhamma. Let me see. It's in here somewhere. I can't remember this. Okay, so there's dana, sila, precepts, pavana. So those are the first three that I spoke of. Okay, dana, sila, pavana, and then fourth one, apachayana, means humility, viyavajja. Oh yes, acts of service and helping others. And so in Buddhist history you see things like building bridges, repairing roads, putting water outside the front of your house for travellers to drink from. Even when I first arrived in the countryside, that was very common, that people would have a sort of water receptacle and one of those coconut ladles for people passing by to be able to drink from. So acts of social service and considered to be meritorious. Okay, so dedication of merit, anumodana, merit, giving, listening to Dhamma talks, and then the last one is straightening one's views, which means creating right view, right understanding of things, which is this kind of the wisdom side of meditation practice. Sometimes includes vipassana, and understanding the Four Noble Truths and three characteristics, developing confidence in the law of karma, the fact that our lives are determined or conditioned by our actions rather than some external force. Has that muddied the waters again now? Has it made it very clear? I think if you stick with the first three, this is a kind of a commentarial sort of elaboration on for lay Buddhist society.
Can Prajnan comment on the people's ability to predict the future, to read people's mind, and even to predict the correct numbers in the national lottery? Oh. To what extent, can that be acquired from meditation practices? As far as predicting things like lottery numbers and things, yes, it's possible under certain conditions. But its question is, why would you do that? Yeah, maybe you want to win the lottery, but apart from wanting to win the lottery, no. For monks, it's it's not proper to meditate in order to gain that kind of power. And monks who do, then the people they tend to attract to their monasteries tend to be people interested in gambling and making money rather than listening to Dhamma. So monks attract the kind of people that they deserve, if you like. And a monk I knew who's quite successful at this, his explanation to me of what happens is that it's not actually like a power that arises in himself, but that the devata tell him. So this is just something I'm passing on to you. So it's beyond. But the future is not, as you say, absolutely fixed. So this is why remembrance of past lives and so on can be very accurate, reliable, whereas the jnana, the knowledge of future events, tends to be of trends and possibilities and likelihoods, and so predictions, whether they are from people who read palms and Mordu and all these people, they tend to be much more accurate for people who don't meditate than people who do meditate. And in fact, many of them will say if you're a meditator, they don't want to make predictions, they don't feel confident, because you are creating, a power of change within yourself, which means that you're less and less predictable and determined, conditioned by external factors which can be predicted in that way. But as you know, the Buddha didn't really want us to be, get sort of excited and interested in all these things. And Ajahn Chah, of course, when he was alive and a young monk, then people would be going to him for the lottery numbers, regularly. And there was one particular local villager who was always asking every time the lottery came out, Ajahn Chah says, I can't tell you, I won't tell you, it's not correct for monks to do this. So he said, you just say that because you don't know. So what Ajahn Chah said, well, look, I'll show you what I'll do. And he got a piece of paper and he wrote on it, and then he put it in a sealed envelope, and he said, like, when the lottery comes, after lottery's up, we'll open it up. And he opened it up, and all the numbers were correct, every single one. So, it is possible. It's just, how important you think it might be.
I'm just asking about the place that Buddha images have in our practice.
In practice, well, the basic idea of Buddha images, I think is to create some kind of physical, tangible expression of intangible qualities like wisdom, compassion, peace, and so on. So the idea is that a Buddha image embodies those qualities that you aspire to develop within yourself. So the qualities that the most essentially define the Buddha were wisdom, compassion, and purity. And so if you bow to a Buddha image, then ideally you're bowing to those qualities of wisdom, compassion, and purity. So it's a something, that you can bow to, and but if you lack that understanding, then a Buddha can become an idol. If you have the right understanding, it can be an aid to devotion and strengthening one's focus and faith in practice. So the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, the Buddha is the great teacher, the person who discovered the path to enlightenment and revealed it to us, the teachings themselves, and all the great teachers from the time of the Buddha onwards, men and women who've proved through their life that this is something which is practical, possible, workable. So one bows a sense of devotion and gratitude, and it's a way of also purifying the mind, bringing up the positive emotions. And I think that there are certain practices which very lend themselves to intellectual analysis, but other practices are there to work on the emotions. There's not any sort of great intellectual aspect to it, but we can't overlook the value of developing positive emotions in helping us on the path. And there have been times, particularly in kind of Western Buddhist transmission, where that side of things has been lost. I mean, a lot of the particularly first generations of Buddhist converts, very keen on putting sort of clear water between them and Christian tradition, so sort of downplaying or rejecting all the kind of the faith side. We're not into all that kind of faith and incense and all that stuff. We're Buddhists, we're scientific and all that kind of thing. and it just went a bit too far, to the extent it get kind of dry and a little bit sort of unsatisfying and unfulfilling. So I think that there's been quite a healthy movement back towards that and saying, we're confident enough in being Buddhist to say yes, we can take on certain things like Buddha images and incense and flowers and all these kinds of things and use them skillfully to bring up supportive emotions to help us in our path.
That some people claim that they able to know the path of our karma, and also some people ask for advice or what they should do to get rid of the karma that they might suffer from the past karma. Is it a correct way to do, or should we ask for those kind of advice? Is this accurate advice?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, some people have some special powers, and we can't just say that that's all rubbish and imagination, because there are some very strange and unusual things out there. But I think that in the end, we always come back to what's the effect upon ourselves. Like I was speaking to some school children in Chiang Mai last week, and of course, number one question about ghosts. Like, is there such a thing as ghosts or not, and so on. So I said, well, we could talk about whether or not there are ghosts, till the cows come home, or all day, all night. And there's people who believe will believe, and people who don't believe, and that's there's not much change of opinion on that. But that's not the important thing. That I asked, has there anybody ever here suffered directly because of ghosts? Has a ghost ever sort of hit you over the head, or a ghost ever actually harmed you? So nobody'd ever suffered directly because of ghosts. But I said, has anyone here suffered through fear of ghosts? And everybody had. So I said, so what's really important here is, it's not the question, of whether or not ghosts exist. The question we should be interested in is, how do we deal with fear of ghosts? So our suffering is the fear, it's not the ghost. Okay? So we can say whether or not ghosts really exist, or whether they're a figment of imagination or whatever, that's irrelevant to the fact that we have fear. And what do we do with fear? How do we heal our fear? Okay? So this is principle, I think, was also with people who claim to know that in your past life you did this and you did that, so you need to get in touch with this person who lives in Chiang Mai and go and ask their forgiveness for something you did to offend them in the last life, and this kind of thing that people are told to do. If you want to do that, it's okay. But I think if you start to feel that your future and it is in the hands of other people, and it depends on performing certain ceremonies, then I think it can have a detrimental effect on your own practice and your own willingness to take responsibility for your suffering and find ways to abandon the causes of suffering. If you think the causes of suffering are because you once hurt somebody's feelings in a past life, and now they're reborn and they don't remember and you don't remember, but everything will be all right if you go and say sorry, then I'm not saying that won't happen. I don't have sufficient knowledge to be able to refute that argument or that teaching, but I think it's better just to stick with your body and mind and the Four Noble Truths myself. Because you open this, it's like we call slippery slope. Once you accept this theory that there are things out there and people out there, and that can inflict suffering on you or are inflicting suffering on you, and you do certain ceremonies, and then it will be all right. And then, step by step, when you're into, worshipping idols and asking for things, and Buddhism's got kind of lost somewhere on the way. So I think even if it's true, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to follow that. And I don't quite see how it works, and I've never come across anywhere in the suttas where the Buddha says that you should find, because in the Buddha's time there were many monks and nuns who had these kinds of powers, but we never see the Buddha or the great teachers saying, if you want to be free of suffering, you should find out from one of the great disciples just who you upset in previous lives, and you should go around and visit them and perform ceremonies. So if that was really a valid, useful way of dealing with things, I would expect the Buddha, who taught everything that we need to know to be free of suffering, he would have included that in what he taught us. That's my logic. Okay.
Any more?
Time for one more question, if anybody wants to ask anything. Otherwise we can bring the session to an end.